Hello everyone and welcome back to another Lumineth video. We're here with Siegfried and both you and I, Siegfried, we're super excited for this video, right? Because there was a preview match by GW and that kind of showed off a lot of Lumineth battle traits and war scrolls. And that's at least enough for almost half our book, right? So we can do a thorough review of what we've seen so far. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. And yes, I'm quite hyped and grateful for all those leaks
Yeah,
from that exhibition game.
yeah. Just looking at our our starting slide here, I only just noticed how weird the bowstring is from the guy in the back. It's like
Yeah.
very weirdly curved. Anyway, so yeah, we're calling it leaks, but I guess it's not really a leak because GW put them out there themselves. So you'll see that most of our, or actually all of our pictures will be screenshots from the stream. So the quality of the pictures might vary a little bit, but I've tried to, choose only the good pictures, and the bad ones, for example, the ones that we have from Spearhead, we only had that picture from the like the top down view. I actually transferred all those war scrolls into typed slides here in the PowerPoint. So I think we'll be able to read everything quite excellently, actually. Anyway, let's look at the summary here. So first of all, Seek will cover battle traits and formations because that's what we'll need to actually assess the value of our war scrolls. Then we'll quickly talk about spell lores, and I say quickly because, well, sadly, there's just not very much to tell, or at least not as much as before, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then we'll move on to the war scrolls. We have all the war scrolls from the Aldereth half, at least. Well, we don't have the generic cow, but we have Avalenor, Stone Guard, and a Stone Mage. We also have Severith and the Wind Chargers. And then we have some Venari scrolls, but those are from Spearhead, so there's probably going to be some changes, which we will speculate on. We'll end up with we'll end off with a synopsis of what we've seen and what we expect to change still from the Spearhead to match play, for example, but also where our book or index, I should say, will sit, because keep in mind that when we're assessing the war scroll and the battle traits and so on, everything is going to look pretty weak, I would say. Although CQ did some math hammering that I also included in the PowerPoint. And actually a lot of units came out on top compared to their third edition variants, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But it all will depend on the context of the points and all the other factions. But um, as a prelude, I'd like to say that from the war scroll I've seen from the other factions, I think the power lever has been toned down
Yeah, for sure.
globally.
Yeah, actually, by the time of this recording, I think 2 hours ago, GW released an article about the roles that they want units to fulfill and the stats that they're gonna give to certain races. And one of the sentences in that article specifically mentions what you just said now, Siegfried, that almost everything has been toned down. So yeah, I definitely agree there. So keep that in mind while we're assessing all of these things, because you're gonna be disappointed if you don't. Anyway, let's start off with the battle traits. This is a very juicy bit. We have the overview here on the right side, and then some information on the left. But we'll get into all the abilities of the battle traits in just a bit, Sieg, because I kind of screenshot them individually as well. But let's first do an overall review of these things. So the battle traits.
Yeah.
I would say we lost a little bit, mainly because most of our stuff, even though it's still there, is only once per round. But at least the lightning reactions is still there. So it's a passive applied to the entire army, and it's the same as before, where you basically get to fight with 2 units instead of 1, which is the good old same thing. But then we always had our subtypes like the Venari, the Aldereth, the Huracan, the Cenari. And those also had their own sub-faction abilities, I would say. And those, while they are still in there, have now turned into Facets of War, which is a thing you can only choose once per round normally.
Right.
Yeah. A quick note here, but we will get into that in a later on a later slide. But certain formations, so certain sub-factions, will allow you to keep up one Facet of War for free. For example, the Alrith Temple will always allow you to have the Enduring as Rock up, while also allowing you to choose one other Facet of War. Before we move on to the separate abilities, Seek, is there anything you want to mention here on the design philosophy of the Facets of War, for example?
Well, it seems like a really nice way to have a strategic options
Yeah.
for your games,
Yeah.
because you will get to pick one or two of those battle traits once per round, and you can actually work your way to a list that may be combined arms. And on one battle round, you get to amplify a certain aspect of your list, and on another one, another. So it is really interesting in terms of strategic value, but at the same time, it is a bit disappointing, especially for Lumineth, because for all those players who already own the faction,
Yeah.
they will notice that most of these things are things we had by default
Yeah.
for our army, while now they are your battle traits. So overall, it seems that we have lost rather than won some bonuses.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's the whole philosophy. Um, I took a glimpse of the battle traits for Skaven, and for anyone familiar with that faction, they had pages and pages of battle traits, and now it's a single page.
Yeah.
So I think we will see this thing in all factions.
Yeah,
So
they did mention they wanted to have all the battle traits per army on one sheet of paper.
all in the name of streamlining the
Yeah.
game, which
Yeah.
is especially good for getting new players.
Yeah, and
For
to
the
be
hobby.
honest, I'm a little bit relieved, even though I'm also slightly disappointed because obviously a lot of these things were just things you had all the time, and now you have to choose one. But when I saw the Stormcast ones, those are actually so terribly boring compared to our stuff, and they have 3 battle traits, and 2 of them are actually tied to one another, so you can't really use one without the other. You're allowed to put something in reserve, and the other battle trait is you're allowed to teleport them in, and then their last battle trait is their finest hour, so they can improve the stats of a unit for one turn. If you compare that to what we get to have fun every round. At least we're gonna do cool stuff every round.
Yeah, in terms of flexibility, I think our faction is much better, and as we see the battle traits, I think it will become more apparent.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of like this because if you picked up Lumineth before, you're probably, at least if you did it for the rules, you probably enjoyed this kind of play style, right? Where you have a bunch of options and you have to make tough decisions, because that's always the way we've played.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay. Let's look at them separately. So first of all, we're gonna look at the lightning reactions, the Parafish, and the Shining Company. So again, sorry for the lower quality of the screenshot here, but there was really nothing I could, or not much I could do about that. So yeah, lightning reactions. I'm not actually sure, Siegfried, whether we have to spend too much attention to this. This is something that we've had since the first book that we have or had. You get to fight with 2 units in a row, which is always nice.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty simple and precise rule, so even new players will will pick it up quite nicely. So I don't think any more analyzing is needed
Yeah.
for this.
Then we're moving on to the Venari facets of war, and these names will be very recognizable because one of them used to be a spell that was on almost all of our Venari scrolls, and the other one is a ability that all our Venari had. So Power of Fish is an ability you trigger at the start of the battle round. You declare when you're using it, and then you get to choose one Venari unit. That Venari unit triggers its critical hits on a 5+ rather than a 6+ for the rest of the battle rounds, which is interesting. The triggering of critical hits is something new to the game. So whenever you roll a 6 to hit, something happens, right? It used to be the case for us that a 6 to hit was usually a mortal wound. And if you cast Power of Fish, that increased it to, or that improved it to a 5+ rather than a 6+. So this is kind of still in the same vein, although if the Spearhead War Scrolls are the actual true ones, then we're not having mortal wounds on all our Venari units anymore. But we'll get to that in a later bit. Anything you want to mention about the Power of Fish?
Well, all in all, I think there are good news and bad news.
Yep.
The bad news is that you get to only do it on a single unit. I suspect that the Lord Regent may give a passive ability for us to actually use it 2 times. That is my feeling.
Yep.
And I also get the feeling that our Vanari units won't be wizards anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So the bad news is that you will only get to use it once, probably twice if you get the Lord Regent on the speculation side. But the good thing is it doesn't need the dice roll, and your opponent cannot do anything about it. So while it will be limited, it is a rule that you can rely on to make your strategy, rather than relying on a spell roll, on a casting roll, and have the chance for your opponent to be smart and unbind that spell on the unit that it's obvious that you will use to attack first.
Yeah.
And not permit you to get the bonuses. So I think it's a mixed bag, but all in all, I think I like it.
Yeah, and it's going to be strong on Sentinels and Wardens. Probably less on the Blade Lords because they don't really need it as much, possibly. But yeah, and keep in mind there are formations that allow the Temple units to keep up their Temple power battle trait for the rest of the battle, basically. So there might be a Venari Glittering Host that just allows you to keep either Shining Company or Power of Fish up at all times. Seems super strong if that would be the case, but it might be.
Yeah.
I really like that idea that you mentioned, that the Venari Lord Regent gets an ability to copy the Power of Fish to different units. That would totally fit her War Scroll as well, and would kind of replace the greater Power of Fish ability on her scroll.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense on the way all these rules are structured.
Yeah,
that's the feeling I get, at least.
Yeah, maybe they're giving a similar sort of ability to the Banner Blade for the Shining Company.
We wish. I mean, it would be great to make the Banner Blade viable.
There's just 2 things I want to know. Am I gonna able to be to find a decent use for the Banner Blade, and am I gonna find a decent use for the Sanctum of Amintok? That's the only 2 things that I want to know.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a buff that you can give to one Venari unit, just to be clear. Only one of them will have Power of Fish. But as Secret mentioned, there is no counterplay to this. Or you could go for a different facet of war, which is the Shining Company that used to be on all our Venari units if they stayed in base contact with at least 2 other models. The rule is the same, so subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks that target friendly Venari units for the rest of the battle. and this is for the entire army, which is really cool. So that kind of makes me think that the glittering host is something that will probably happen as a formation, where you're just allowed to keep the Shining Company facet of war up at all times. Having this up in the current format, where all the war scrolls have been, well, nerfed or neutered a little bit, having a constant -1 to hit seems very strong, stronger than before.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it seems that Matt Rosen, the rules team,
Yeah,
are very adamant about not permitting too much bonus or debuff stacking.
yeah,
That is the feeling I get.
yes,
So
yeah. So having that -1 to hit just on an entire army of Venari is pretty cool, right?
yes, and as anyone can see on the latest article, and from some war scrolls I've seen
Yeah,
leaked from other factions too,
yeah,
it seems that they will use again the 4-up hit
yeah. As a standard,
on
right?
many units.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the value of Shining Company will be even better than before.
Yeah. Yeah, reducing a 3+2 to a 4+ is immensely impactful. So from going from 4 to 5 is even worse,
It's
obviously.
devastating. I mean,
Yeah. I remember when our first Lumineth book was released, how incredibly overpowered that Shining Company was, because the game was just not ready to deal with a all-out -1 to hits. I kind of feel like we're sort of back at that place now. So if there is a formation that allows Shining Company to be up at all times, um, it'll be pretty potent. And I say that without knowing what the Venari War Scrolls will look like, obviously, because if they're kind of weak, then why are you wanting a full Venari force, right?
yeah. Well, I think also the loss of other chords
Yeah,
will hurt our uh, toughness
yeah,
factor action. But again, I feel that this is the direction the rules team wants to go, and
yeah.
especially if we don't have Mystic Shield
Mm-hmm.
as a spell, as a universal spell.
Yeah,
If you take this into account, paired with the fact that there won't be any finest hour for the heroes,
yeah,
and they seem to have removed many of the plus to save modifiers,
mm-hmm.
I think it will be a much more killy game, which I think it's nice because it makes the game go faster. And I mean, we are here to have a battle, a bloody battle. So
Yeah.
I think it's better for lore and
Yeah, and I
immersion.
and I honestly wouldn't be bothered if the Venari units were, at least the Wardens, for example, were a little bit weaker, because I really need a screen in our force that is cheap and also functions as a screen, right? And Wardens were always that double effectiveness, had always that double effectiveness of also being able to deal a lot of damage. So you paid a lot of points for those screens as well. And now we're probably not going to need to pick Wardens anymore before we get to pick something else, because there's no battle line anymore. Um, I
Yeah, this will be a huge boon for
yeah,
our list building.
exactly, and I'm really looking forward to Wardens costing 110 points or something, at least 110 points in the current climate, because I do think that all the war scrolls are going to be more expensive. We have some proof to back that up, by the
Yeah,
way. Yeah.
yeah.
But I
And
do hope for a super cheap Warden unit that I can just have two or three units of 3 in the front of my force. They actually are they're the brunt. They take the brunt of the charges, which is what their models kind of simulate, right? They look like they need to be in front, and then we'll punch with different units.
yeah, I mean, my I'm calling that they will be 120 points for
Yeah,
10
yeah.
if they are as we see them on the Spearhead, if
Mm-hmm.
the rules are identical to it. But I mean, I think we will see less screens than before,
Yeah.
because now that every unit has a 3-inch range,
Yeah.
you don't get to use a screen and have the good unit behind and get a free um combat activation versus your opponent.
Yeah.
Because if your unit behind your screen is within 3 inches of the unit that attacked your screen, they can attack your unit on the back directly. So if you use a screen, you will lose it, and then you will have to see, um, perhaps on a priority roll, if you will get to strike the unit that destroyed your screen. So it won't, the screens won't be as effective.
Yeah.
So if one doesn't have a really cheap screen, I believe most armies will opt not to use any screens at all.
That's interesting.
But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, let's move on to our second abilities here, our second row of abilities. So here we have the battle traits for the non-Venari units in our army. So we have them for the Huracan, we have them for the Cenari, and we have them for the Alarith. So the Huracan one is super cool, and I really love that they went this direction with their design for the Huracan, because this finally makes Huracan units play like I wanted them to play for forever, basically. Before they just had this weird gimmick of having a longer pile-in if they charged, and there was really no point in them charging, and then you didn't have to pile into the closest unit, and it just felt a little bit weird. I understood the whole philosophy with the tornado and the kangaroos hopping back and forth, but it just didn't really play nicely, right? And now we get this, which is cool. So you get to pick up to 3 friendly Huracan units that are not in combat to be the targets. And then once you do, so you only do this in the shooting phase, just to be clear. Once you do, each target can move a distance up to its movement characteristic, which is cool. It cannot move into combat during any part of that move, so that makes sense. You can come within 3 inches of different units or enemy units, and it cannot use shoot abilities for the rest of the turn. That seems like a harsh last sentence, but keep in mind you can do this at any part in your shooting phase, so you've already shot, basically. So the only thing that you cannot do is double up on the move and then use your shooting abilities, but you can still move, shoot, and then move back, which is, what they should have done in the first place. What do you think about this?
I think this is one of the rules that made me the happiest.
Yeah.
Because it unlocks different ways to play the army, which was one of the things that disappointed me the most, or in our last battle tome, because we're locked to play the castle.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what you did, you needed to play the castle, and you didn't, especially in terms of competitive play, you didn't really have any other choice. And this makes a huge difference. Just a reminder, it only happens in our shooting phase.
Yeah.
So you can use it to get away on the enemy's shooting phase, so it won't create any negative play experiences.
Yeah.
So please don't hate us for the rule.
They will, because we're Lumineth.
Yeah, I had to try.
Yeah.
And I think it will be a huge boon, and paired with the rules that we will see on Sevireth, I think it makes for a great army with great mobility. It won't hit as a truck, but it will create ways to play Lumineth and not be tied up to a castle, which was like a curse, I think, for us.
Yeah, and this is so potent in different ways, right? Because the possibilities of this ability are kind of endless, especially because we're losing Speed of Fish in its current format, at least, so we don't get to double up on movement anymore. So you're gonna need some units in your army that get to do those tricky moves to get onto different objectives. So that's one part of this ability, but also I really like the idea of having a front line of Alarith or Warden units and then just hopping back and forth with your Kangaroos.
Yeah.
That just seems like a thing that Lumineth Realm Lords would always do, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it will be great, I think.
Okay, so moving on to other two facets of war. Just like the Venari ones, these happen at the start of the battle round, so only the Huracan one happens in our own shooting phase. You've got Deep Thinkers here, also completely reworked. So instead of all your scenario wizards being able to use this once per game to have a spell go off on a 9, you now get +1 to casting rolls for all friendly scenario units for the rest of the battle round. Yeah, you know, I'm gonna let you take the lead here.
Okay, I think this is one of the most disappointing
Agreed. Yeah.
battle traits and facets because I mean, unless the game gets really toned down in terms of casting bonuses in general, which will give the +1 much more value. As it is now, it is like half of the Zytrek subfaction rule only for scenario units. So if you have a Stone Mage or a Wind Mage, they won't be able to use the rule. So it's a highly focused rule, and I believe this is the one that will be less used.
Yeah, completely agree.
I don't see us using it in a competitive play unless it is a really it is a do or die thing, and you really need a spell to be cast, perhaps a crucial speed of his to get an objective at a later battle round, something like that.
It's just
but otherwise, I don't see this get picked over the other options.
Exactly, it's just not strong enough, right?
Yeah.
If it was at 3 or even at 2, then we're talking. But now, as it stands, even in our current formats, we wouldn't really be interested in this with lists where you take a lot of scenario. For example, the Rune of Centaur build that we've discussed in a previous video. This would just not be useful because it's only 2 casting rolls. Why would you not make it to affect unbinds and dispels and banishment rolls as well? That would be much more interesting.
Yeah, it sounds really weak at first sight.
Yeah, and keep in mind that we're moving on to a game where you get to where you need to choose one spell lore, and that spell lore consists of 3 spells, and all your wizards get to choose from those same spells every round. So you're probably not running 3 scenario wizards anymore. So are you really choosing to add 1 to casting rolls for 1 or 2 scenarii? I don't think so.
Yeah, and I mean, the main reason for us to use a scenario wizard before was the fact that they were the only ones, apart from the Vanari units, that had access to the Lore of His, which is not the case anymore. And they also had the autocast on a 9, which is not the case again anymore. So unless we see some really powerful abilities or war scroll spells on the scenario wizards, we may not see many scenario wizards at all. Perhaps a single enlightener with a silver wand to get 3 to cast 3 spells, and that will be it.
Yeah.
And get a second wizard from a temple or wind mage, either stone mage. I believe we will see something like this, like 2 small wizards and no more.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little bit disappointing. We obviously don't know what war scrolls look like for the scenarii, but it just doesn't really. I can't really see a world where adding 1 to your casting rolls is immensely impactful.
Yeah.
At least not if it's only scenarii. Okay, so the one that might be impactful though is Enduring as Rock. So this one is obviously for the Alarith units. So once again, start the battle round, you only get to use one Facet of War. Subtract 1 from the rend characteristic of weapons used for attacks that target friendly Alrith units for the rest of the battle round. It's weaker than before on paper, but if you look at the overall study of the game, where they kind of promise to tone down the amount of mortal wounds that are in the game, and the value of rend has gone down a little bit as well, I think this is actually overall for the Alrith a bonus or a buff to compared to their previous version.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it works the same way as the last iteration of Enduring as a Rock. It is not Alrith units not get to access to it automatically.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you include Alrith units, you will most likely use the sub faction that lets you have this automatically.
Yeah.
And as you said, I think we've seen a reduction in rend for many units, and I think that it will be impactful.
Yeah,
Sure.
and Alrith were so prone to taking damage from mortal wounds before. I mean, they had their 4+ obviously if they were on an objective. But with mortal wounds being just less of a common thing now on War Scrolls, I think we're looking bad at rend for our ways to deal with high save units. So, you know, subtracting one from that rend characteristic is really really helpful. We do have a little spoiler though that the Stone Guard have returned to a 4+ save, which is a bummer. But you know,
Yeah, well, we've seen, I've seen from War Scrolls of other armies that the save was less than before in some cases.
yeah,
So I think we're good. I
yeah,
mean, I would prefer 3-up,
yeah.
but I think it's not devastating.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so those are the battle traits. I included the Enduring as Rock battle trait in our next slide as well, because it talks about the Alrith Temple, so it made sense to have them side by side here. So formations are the new sub-factions. They've already told us that each army will get 4 sub-factions or 4 formations, and we got to see one of them in the stream, and that was the Alrith Temple. So the effect from the Alrith Temple is as follows. You can use the Enduring as Rock ability in addition to the other Facet of War ability you use during the battle rounds. So that basically means that you're going to have the Facet of War for as Enduring as Rock up for the entire battle, basically. That makes me believe that our other formations are probably going to be Hurricane Temple. I can't really see how there would be any other option there. Then there's probably the Glittering Host. Mostly I expect this because it was in our previous book where we still had formations. And then the fourth one I'm actually not sure of. A Sonari one might be interesting, but then I hope it's different than the other ones that we're gonna get. I just hope it's not only like you get to use Deep Thinkers all the time, because that's gonna be hella boring. Maybe there's a Sonari Council or something where you get to pick 3 Sonari heroes and they do something if they're close together or something like that. Or they might move on to the Water Temple, because we have 1 Water Temple unit now. But that I don't really see that happening.
Yeah, well, I think it will be the Sinari one.
Yeah.
And the boring version.
Yeah, probably.
As it is. But this, when we get the Battle Tome, this will be replaced with a River Temple at that point.
Yeah.
And I think when we get the Battle Tome, we will get the River Maids, the River Spirit, and perhaps another River Temple unit, because I'm not sure the Warcry, Warband, will be the main River Temple unit for our faction.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think it will be the scenario one, and it will be the one that will get replaced, as long as they keep the format of 4 sub factions for its army.
Yeah, I can totally see them going back on that later on in the edition, depending on how far you're in. I do believe most of the books at the beginning will have 4, but then halfway, there's always a reason, right? If you're looking at Soulblight Gravelords, for example, I can't imagine when they get their book that they're only gonna have 4 sub-factions.
Yeah, but it might be the case.
Yeah.
I think they will see how this format is received, because I think playtest did enough more than the previous editions.
Yeah.
That's my feeling.
Yeah.
And so I believe it will be balanced to a great extent, but it will remain to be seen whether it will be popular. So if people are happy, they will keep it. If they see people lose interest or get bored, we may see some changes.
Yeah.
But my feeling is, as it was before, we got, I mean, 6 sub-factions, or some other armies got 4 or 5 or more, but most of them weren't any good.
Yeah, we played
So
2.
I prefer each faction get 4 great sub-factions that actually mean something and give the faction some options and in list building and in strategy,
Yeah.
rather than have more and, like, 70% of them be useless.
Yeah, and I can totally picture myself bringing a mixed armed force and keeping the army exactly the same, but just changing around the formations to see what formation works best with the same army. Because if you're mixing Alarith with Huracan, for example, which we will see in a later slide, because that was the army that was played in the stream, I can imagine Nicola trying out the Enduring as Rock Alarith Temple first, and then maybe also trying the Huracan Temple to see which of the buffs he needed up most of the time, something like that. So that's cool.
Yeah, and I mean, the Alarith Temple, I think he chose wisely to get the Alarith Temple, so he will always have a Enduring as Rock, because the Huracan Temple ability is the one that there are more chances that you won't be using it at some point.
Yeah. That being said, there were only 2 sub-factions or subtypes in his list, so he only had Alarith and Huracan. So either one that he chose, the other one would always be up anyway, right? Because there was no point for him to select the Scenario of Venari ones because he had none.
Yeah, I mean, he made it easy for himself.
Yeah.
In the list building phase.
Yeah.
So he won't need to be on a dilemma about which facet to use.
Yeah, which is wise if you're learning or playtesting a new game or showing off a new game.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I will do the same, most likely.
Okay, we done with formations, or do you want to drop anything else in here?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, moving on. So spell lores. This is probably the most painful bit for me throughout this presentation. It might be the same for you, Seek, knowing you a little bit. So a quick recap. So every army, when selecting spell lores, gets to choose 1 spell lore for their entire army. So for Lumineth, that is Sad Days. But you'll also get one manifestation lore for the entire army, and that's free. That manifestation lore is basically a collection of invocations and endless spells. So for the Lumineth, we have a Lumineth-specific manifestation lore, which includes our 3 endless spells. But we might as well choose a different manifestation lore. For example, the Incarnate is a manifestation lore in itself, but we could also go with the ones from Shaiish, for example, and you get the Purple Sun and all that stuff. But the most important bit here is there's no more mixing of spell lores. So that means for Lumineth, you're either choosing the lore of Fish, the lore of the High Peaks, or the Wind lore. And then that's it. You have to choose one of those. And all your wizards can cast spells from that entire lore, which includes 3 spells per lore so far. But that's it. No more mixing and matching your spells.
Yeah, and that is if the mountain and the wind lore exist,
Exactly.
which I'm leaning quite a bit that they won't exist anymore.
Yeah, I agree. The only reason why I would still why I still think there might be a chance for them to be around is if they're not, what is the point of Teclis?
Yeah, I feel Teclis will be um, much less
Yeah,
powerful, but it may lead to a cheaper Teclis in terms
yeah,
of points.
yeah,
So it may end up balancing out in the end.
yeah. Who knows? Yeah. Anyway, let's look at some examples here. I do. Yeah, there we go. I did think that I included the army roster here first, but I think I might have done at the end of the spell lore section. So here we're looking at the lore of Fish. As you can see, reduced to only 3 spells. A lot of fan favorites though. We have the Speed of Fish in a completely different format. We have Overwhelming Heat in the same format as always, and the Protection of Fish almost in the same format. It did receive a very important buff. But let's first talk about the Speed of Fish here. The first part is basically the same. You get to choose Luminous Realm Lord's unit wholly within 18 inches. It's cost on a 5, which is also the same. But then the effect is different. You don't get to double up the move anymore. You add 4, and 4 is not a lot. So this spell seems very unimpressive, but then I really want to, point your focus to the keywords there. The keywords next to the spell keyword is unlimited, which means you get to cast a spell multiple times, which makes it a little bit like the command for Ossiarch Bone Reapers, and that is really
Yeah.
strong in their book. So I think in the Discord seek you hadn't picked that up from the get-go, right?
Yeah, and I was pretty devastated
Yeah,
because I mean, okay, I can understand that double the move on Severeth
yeah,
or a 14-inch unit like the Wind Chargers or the Dawn Riders
hmm,
can be really impactful. But I was like, come on, man, give it a +6, not +4.
yeah,
But then I noticed the unlimited keyword, and that changed the game. I mean, this in and on itself may be reason enough for us to include the third wizard,
yeah,
just to be able to uh, make our army faster, which again, it was one of the curses of the army.
yeah,
And this will give us at least some options for us to be able to field a Vanari infantry list and still be able to have decent movement.
yeah.
It will make a huge difference, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and 4 inches isn't a lot, but if you imagine it used on 3 units, for example, that is quite impactful. And for Stone Guard, nothing changes basically. It's still
Yeah,
double their move.
yeah, I'm still pretty bummed that they still are
Yeah,
on four
same.
movement. Yeah,
I really felt like they deserved 6 inches there as well.
they are not that heavy armored.
No, exactly. Yeah. So overall, do you think this is stronger than the previous version?
Yes, yes.
Okay, cool.
Just on the grounds because in the old days, even with the ability of the Enlightener, it wasn't a 3-up. You weren't able to plan ahead.
Yeah,
And I mean, it's still a casting role, so it's not a guaranteed bonus to movement. But now you can make a strategy that I will make all my army be faster because if our main battle trait is for us to get 2 units to fight.
yeah,
So if you can't bring many units to bear on the opponent, this ability gets wasted. If I can only make 1 unit be fast enough to engage the enemy, I don't get to use actually the
yeah,
single battle
yeah.
trait we have at the moment, right?
Yep. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, and I mostly agree. I will miss the days though where I'm doubling up the speed on the Dawn Riders or on Sevireth just to completely catch my opponent off guard when capturing an objective or destroying their terrain with Sevireth, for example. I'll miss that, but I do think this is overall healthier for the game. It gives us more options. It is not as easy to counter because you have multiple casts anyway, and it's not a feel bad for the opponent either.
Yeah, I think it's an overall a net positive.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, moving on to Overwhelming Heat. So cast on a 7, you pick an enemy unit within 18 inches as before, and then sorry, and then still as before, you get to have the movement characteristic of the target unit until the end of your next turn. And then you roll a dice. If that roll is equal to or exceeds the save characteristic, it inflicts D3 mortal damage, which is also always a little bit more like icing on top anyway. And I think it'll overall will inflict less damage now than before because the save has not been or has been reduced in a lot of armies. So I do think that last part of the spell will trigger less than it's doing now. But having the move is still very strong.
Well, I think that this spell will be used mostly on monsters or heroes, which many of them get to have a 3-up save, and it is quite impactful to have the movement on an important hammer unit, which I think most monsters will be directed to in terms of stats. And a little extra damage will be also useful to chip away at their health, which is how we will be calling it now.
The range has been decreased though, right? From 24 to 18 is just something I recall now.
Well, yeah, it was wholly within 24 inches.
All right, yeah.
So I believe it is better now.
Yeah,
because you just need to get the tip within 18 inches, while before I almost never was able to have a unit wholly within 24 inches. Now it's much simpler and easier to use.
Yeah. Yeah.
It should be on a 6, the casting
I was
value,
just going to say 7 seems like a steep price though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. 6 would have been more fair, I guess. But you know, you need a reason to pop that Deep Thinker's ability, right, Seek?
Yeah. I mean, this spell will be highly situational.
Yeah,
spell.
I agree.
It's nice that you will get the lore and you will get it anyway. So at the crucial time when you will actually need it, you will have it. But it won't be our meat and potatoes spell.
Yeah. Okay, so the last one also received a buff, Protection of Hysh, cast on an 8, and then until the start of your next turn, friendly units have a ward of 5+ while they are wholly within 12 inches rather than the previous 9 inches, which is huge. I do think this is a massive improvement for our army because wards is always something that we lacked and was one of the main reasons why we brought Teclis.
Yes. This is a huge boon.
Yeah, it's very strong and it's gonna be our most important spell most of the time, which also bums me out a little bit because it's a very clear standout on something that you wanna unbind or prioritize unbinding as an opponent, while before Speed of Hysh and Total Eclipse were equally strong and sometimes even stronger in most situations. So you at least had those 3 spells to taunt your opponent to pop an unbind, right? And now with Protection of Hysh, I do feel like it's a very clear standout.
True, but on the upside, as we will see when we come to the War Scrolls, we now have more units with access to ward saves.
Yeah.
So I think it won't be as much of a crutch as it was before.
Fair enough.
So, I mean, it won't be as devastating if we don't get to cast it successfully.
Yeah.
I feel.
How do you feel about losing a lot of spells here, though?
Well, I believe with the new format that they want the command points to be really limited and really standardized as a resource. I think Total Eclipse will be gone anyways.
Yeah, I agree. That it would have
Um,
broken the game.
yeah, Solar Flare, no one used it
Nope.
really. And Ethereal Blessing, again, it was a nice spell to have, but I almost never used it.
I
So
actually use it quite a lot.
really, I always had the other priorities. It's not that it wasn't a nice spell,
Yeah, true.
but for some reason, I mean, now we don't have the other chords. It might be, and we may not have even the Mystic Seal. It will be much more powerful,
Exactly.
nice to have. So I think this is the only real loss
Yeah. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
terms that Total Eclipse is against the design of the game. So
Yeah, Total Eclipse was also just such a massive feel bad for every opponent that I've played against. Even when they didn't really intend on using all of their command points, it just really felt very bad for them. And I always also thought that it was pretty boring to use as a Lumineth player as well. You just popped it and then you didn't really feel the gratification of something happening right away. While with Speed of Fish or something, it gave you that immediate boost in effectiveness and that really felt good. But with Total Eclipse, it was also just always just a little bit of a nuisance, right? Both for us and the opponent.
yeah, and it was all or nothing. I mean, there were armies that were devastated
Yeah,
by it, and other armies that had many ways to generate command points, and it was useless.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
So,
okay. So I guess we'll have to wait and see whether there's a different lore available still. Um, Nicola
well,
chose
I get
this.
the feeling that we'll see the some of the temple lore spells on war scrolls,
Yeah, yeah.
hero war scrolls, rather than on a lore. So
Yeah, the fact that
it's
we're seeing Living Fissure, which is a Lore of Hive Peaks spell on the Stone Mage, does kind of back that up, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's quickly talk about the manifestation lore, even though there's not a lot to say here. So this was shown to us in the stream, but you actually cannot tell what the endless spells do because their battle scrolls are not included on this screenshot. So you get to see what their rules are for setup and what their casting values are. Those are mostly the same. The fact that the Sanctum of Amintok is still only a 4 to cast makes me think that it's still going to be absolutely terrible. Um, that being
Yeah.
said, the Rune of Petrification was used in the stream, and they did mention there that it inflicted D3 mortal damage to enemy units. I don't actually recall the range. Do you, Seek?
I think it's still 18 inches, but it's really foggy about uh, how it actually works because before you got to roll a 4 up within 6 inches on at the start and at the end of its movement phase. So we don't really have any solid information on how it works.
Yeah.
And if the rumors are true that you can only give always strike last if you uh, roll a 5 or 6 for the mortal wounds,
Mm-hmm.
it's really unreliable.
Yeah, and even
Uh,
then, it's not actually guaranteed, Seek, because the um, rule seems to be written, and it was also confirmed by the way that Nicola and the Skaven player, sorry, I forgot his name, which is a little bit disrespectful. They talked about this interaction here, and they said, okay, but the rule says if you dealt 3 damage, then the enemy unit strikes last for the rest of the turn. What about if you save one of those with a ward save? And then
yeah,
they both kind of agreed that it would not trigger. So the chance of you triggering always strike last on units is very slim. That being said, it is AoE damage, so you always have you also always have multiple chances, right? If there's multiple units around anyway. So, we'll see. But you're probably not going to get the 3 damage on the units that you want most, especially because those units usually do have some kind of ward as a defensive mechanism, so they'll probably have a way to nullify or at least reduce the 3 damage and thus nullifying the always strike last ability.
Yeah, and I mean, it really depends on how this thing works, because if the opponent is able to move away before you get to do the damage,
Yeah.
then again, it may be even less powerful. So it's really we have too little information at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Quickly, some tinfoil hat time about the Sanctum and about the Hisuian Twinstones. I do think there's a very, very big chance that the Twinstones are just going to remain the same.
Yeah.
Because with the loss of a lot of the easier spells in our book, you won't have a lot of, or not have as many successful spellcasts around your Hisuian Twinstones anyway. So for example, if it's true that the Venari units are all going to lose their spellcasting, which does seem like it will happen, and it makes sense for it to happen, then you're not loading up or charging up these Hisuian Twinstones as fast as you used to. So that kind of mellows out their power spike as well, right? So I do think that there's a pretty big chance for them to be exactly the same as before.
Yeah, and I mean, if we end up actually needing the protection of his
Yeah.
that much, this may be our go-to manifestation lore, just to be able to enforce protection of his.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Sanctum, I mean, I don't really know what to say about it. It seems the same as before. Again, obviously it can't really be anything else because it is physically designed to set up in a ring. But man, I do hope that it's some sort of healing or something compared to what it was before.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that it takes up so much space, I don't see me using it.
Yeah.
Unless it has some really, really huge buff.
Yeah. If you're reading the description up on the top there, the ground splits around the mage and the life force of the realm springs forth as a crackling shield. Ugh.
Yeah.
It's gonna be like +1 to save, or maybe a 5+ ward save or something useless like that. Yeah.
Yeah. This is highly likely.
Yeah. It would be cool if it increased the casting potential of a unit or something like that, or you know what would be cool if it allowed you to cast a new spell. Like if you're in the Sanctum of Amyntok, you can throw around Mystic Shields, for example.
Or make the opponent not be able to have line of sight.
Ooh, that's cool. That might still happen. But that could happen.
Again, imagine that it is only on a 4 casting value. So
yeah.
If the opponent wants to take it away, he will take it away.
Yeah.
So
okay, so I promised myself that I would not be buying the endless spells until the Sanctum was useful. So the question remains whether I'll go an entire edition without buying the endless spells for Lumineth once again. I keep proxying the rune and the Twinstone, so I do use the other endless spells, but it just feels bad buying an entire box for just those 2 small things that I can easily replicate with different models here.
Yeah, and the models are not the best looking endless spells.
No, the Twinstones are pretty cool, but the rune is really derpy looking. I do think that, and the Sanctum is awesome, but useless.
Yeah.
Okay. So you get a manifestation lore for free. So all of these spells and the Lore of Hysh spell are free, which basically allows all of your casting heroes, so all of your wizards, just get to choose from these spells. So they don't have to choose in advance. Throughout the battle, every hero phase, you just get to select from these spells. So that's interesting. And also, once again, leaves me with the question, how are they gonna make Teclis feel worth it? Because that used to be one of his perks, that he could choose between all of these spells. And now everyone's a little bit like Teclis. So
Well, he may be able to cast multiple
oh yeah,
endless spells.
yeah.
So instead of View tapping on multiple spell lores, he will be able to be an endless spell casting machine
Yeah, maybe he knows
on top
all the
of his own
manifestation
spells.
lores.
So, there are some options
Yeah,
to have him still be relevant.
yeah. Good point. Yeah, so the last slide for the spell lores here is the example army roster with just... I just wanted to show this off because it kind of solidifies what I said about how the spell lords are going to be selected. So you see Nicola here, he chose the Lore of Hysh and he chose the manifestations of Hysh, because both Seek and I think that he probably didn't really have much other choices for the spell lore, at least. And the manifestation lore, I mean, there are some good endless spells around. It depends on how they're gonna rework them, obviously. I do wonder what they're gonna do with the incarnates as a manifestation lore in and of itself, because all manifestation lores are free, but you can't possibly give the incarnate for free, right?
Yeah, I believe it will be a special case.
Yeah. Or it must be
That you
so
will
difficult
also
to
need
summon or
to,
something.
yeah, to pay some points. It won't be 480 points, but I also think that his stats will be much more tame.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, a quick thing to note here is that this is a 2K list. And if you did the quick maths, it's almost 200 points more expensive than what we would have now, which does solidify our opinion here that all War Scrolls are going to be more expensive, because the same was the case for the Skaven. I think the reason for War Scrolls going up is because you get the free endless spells, and they want quicker battles, I guess. That's always a thing with every new edition. They're like, we're gonna make quicker battles, we're gonna make everything more deadly. Now they reduce the deadliness in some cases, so maybe that's why they're giving us less units to play with.
Yeah, I mean, it's 260 points actually, according to the calculations.
All right, so
If we
it's
have the previous points
yeah. Oh, so it's
but
cheaper.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, the 200 if it were with the current points, this list will be 1,740
Yeah, okay.
points.
Yeah.
But I think that in terms of this list, I think the Wind Chargers are quite a bit more expensive than they were.
They need to be, because they're much more effective as well.
And durable. So I think, and Stoneguard will be a bit more expensive. So I think all in all, we won't see that much of a difference. But we'll have to see. So I don't think it will be most lists 260 points more expensive.
We lost the Warden tax, of course, so there is that.
Yes, thank God.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like a chains. Whenever I wanted to make a list, the battle line for Lumineth was a huge prison for us. I mean,
I agree.
I feel much more excited for list building.
Yeah, it was just unfun, right? You try to build an entire force of Stoneguard and Wind Chargers, and maybe you wanted to add a unit of Dawn Riders to that, and then you're like, oh wait, I can't. I either have to pick more Stoneguard or I have to choose Wardens to make my Dawn Riders battle line as well.
Yeah. Yes, it was unintuitive, and no.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the War Scrolls. So I did a quick summary here before we get into all the War Scrolls that have been leaked. So all the new War Scrolls have color-coded abilities and symbols. I included them on the right here, so you can give it a quick look over if you haven't already. Ryan and I did a very in-depth review on the way War Scrolls are built in a previous video, so go check that out. It's on in the series of the Road to 4th Edition. Overall, the War Scrolls are also reduced in strength. Units will be more expensive than before, as Zeke and I just talked about. And something that they gave away in the stream that I just picked up a little bit earlier today was that most cavalry units will gain an extra health. So they'll go from 2, not wounds, 2 health to 3 health, which is also the case for us, at least for the kangaroos. And maybe also for the Dawn Riders. We'll have to see. Wait and see. As far as the Lumineth War Scrolls go, I really love what I'm seeing so far, because finally, everything plays like it should play. My Hurricane Temple feels fast and shooty and very bad in combat. My Stone Guard feel very tanky and decent in combat. Avalenor feels like a fucking truck if it hits you, and also still tanky. So I really, really like that. And if I'm looking at the Venari stuff, them having lost their spellcasting ability is honestly, I wouldn't really be bothered by it at all if their Spearhead War Scrolls remain the same for match play, because it always felt weird that our militia had the strength to cast spells, but our temple units who've been studying under temple priests and wizards for centuries couldn't cast a spell for their life. That was weird, right?
Yeah, and it added more bookkeeping.
Yeah,
on a faction that already had lots of bookkeeping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the War Scrolls also have all of them have been simplified. So they also did mention the War Scroll article that every scroll will have at least one ability and some of them will have more. I think you'll see on basic units, you'll see one ability, and on heroes and elite units, you'll probably see 2 or 3. Or sometimes 4 or 5. Keep in mind, once again, this is something that we mentioned at the start of this video, but these are indexed War Scrolls. The reason why we're having indexes in the first place is because they wanted to tone down the power and make things more balanced. So that's why everything seems a little bit more boring, I guess. Anything you want to add, Zeke, before we move on to the separate War Scrolls?
No, and not everything is boring, but we'll see. It's a mixed bag.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's just, by boring, I mean more plain, I guess. Simpler.
Yes, more streamlined.
Streamlined, yeah.
But again, this is the direction they want to go.
Exactly,
overall.
yeah. And so far, I really think they pulled it off. Okay.
Yeah. Especially compared to our late Battle Dome.
Yeah.
Which was streamlined, but actually felt like watering down.
Yeah, it was very weird. I didn't really enjoy Lumineth in the previous year. I really loved the build that you had and the mix build that I did with it. I enjoyed that, but other than that, I didn't really enjoy building lists for Lumineth because it just felt so restrictive and boring, and so many units were bad and didn't really have a clear role. And now that feels like it has been changed at least. But let's dive into Sevireth first.
Yeah.
Probably the highlight of the scrolls that we've seen in a lot of ways, because the kangaroos have also had a massive glow up, but mostly because they function so well with Sevireth. So, let's look at his scroll. 10 health, which is cool. 5 control, which is better than his 2 control that he had before. Only 18 inches move instead of the 24 that he used to have. And a 4+ save, which is an improvement from the 5+ that he had before, which is nice. Sevireth has the still the same bow, 12 inches. I think it used to be 18.
Yes.
4 attacks, which is the same, I think. And then it used to hit on... I think the profile is basically the same, right? The only difference here that it adds +1 to the damage.
Yes, and the fact that he can shoot in combat,
Yeah.
which I mean, it was a given before, but now it's an actual ability.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and that is something to keep in mind, because you don't want to put your Huracan units into combat, but if they end up being in combat, they're still going to put out a lot of hurt in the shooting phase.
Yeah.
His abilities are fun. I think they really nailed his War Scroll, and they really chose wisely in keeping the abilities that made him fun and not made him feel bad to play against. So you have the passive, the Living Gale, which is amazing. This unit cannot be targeted by shooting attacks made by enemy units that are more than 9 inches from this unit. Wow. That also means that you never can catch him out with a Deep Striker ability, because that always has to be more than 9 inches away.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this and enemy shooting was the bane of the Wind Spirits and Sevireth. So this gives him a huge edge.
Yeah, I mean, his save went up. He retained his ward save, as you see in the keywords now. So he's Ward Master, Unique Hero, Monster Fly, and Ward 5+. So he still has his ward save, if you hadn't picked that up. So his survivability has gone up. He did lose 6 inches to his movement, though, which is, a little bit of a bummer, especially because the range on his bow also went down. But now he gets to... I mean, he got to move that as well. Of course, he also always had the ability to move 12 inches in your own shooting phase after you shot. But now he gets to move 18 inches.
Yes. This actually makes him better.
Yeah.
Because you will get to actually retreat for sure at a safe distance.
Yeah, and keep in mind, Speed of Hysh adds 4 to the movement characteristic, and the Huracan ability allows you to use your movement characteristic. So if you add Speed of Hysh on top of this, it's 22 inches forwards and 22 inches backwards as well, or sidewards, or wherever you want to go.
Yes, yes.
Super strong.
The synergies with Huracan are huge, and I'm so happy for that.
Yeah, if you want to take the lead on the next ability.
Yeah. Searing Desert Winds, it's an ability that acts as a rampage.
Yeah.
Because Sevireth is a monster now.
Yeah.
And you get to pick 3 different units at the combat phase. And you roll a d3, and on a 2-up, which means you need to roll a 3-up on a dice roll. You get to do that much mortal damage on each target, and you subtract 1 from the target units to wound rolls, which is much more powerful than what he had before. Because before, only when he charged, and now it can also act as a defensive ability. He needed to roll a 3-up, and he only did 1 mortal wound, and then the unit got -1 to hit, which is something that can be negated with all-out attack. While -1 to wound, it will most likely stick.
Yeah, and you mentioned something interesting at the beginning of your explanation here. Roll d3 for each target. On a 2+, inflict an amount of mortal damage on a target equal to the roll. So I interpreted that as you still just need to roll a 2 on a d6, but then you revert it to a d3, but that's probably not the case then.
Yeah, at least that's the way I interpret it. So on a d3, a 2 is an actual 3-up roll.
Yeah, yeah.
And it saves time, because we will see it on other abilities. Instead of rolling a 2-up and then do d3 damage, they just say on a 2-up, on a d3, you do that much mortal wound.
They changed that for a lot of units. Also in the Skaven War Scrolls, this comes up a lot, this kind of ability. And I think that is a very nice improvement.
Yes, it saves up time, and you actually just do on a 3 up 2 or 3 mortal wounds, which is, and it makes it even more impactful
Yeah,
when it lands.
yeah. Yeah, and up to 3 different units is also cool. You obviously need to be in combat with them, so within 3 inches. But it never made sense to me that if a Searing Hot Tornado is hitting your ranks, it's only targeting 1 unit. It's cool that
Yes, yeah.
it's up to 3 units, even though you're probably not gonna. Well, maybe you are actually. 3 inches is quite a long range.
Yes, you can use now that he also has a 4 up save. I think you use him quite aggressively.
Yeah.
Um,
You were
and
you were talking about the synergy with the other units from the Wind Temple, and that obviously ties into his ability of Spirit of the Wind. Do you want to tackle this one, or is there anything you wanted to mention about the Syrian Desert Winds first?
no, I think we're good with the previous one. Um, Spirit of the Wind gives all Huracan units, including Sevireth,
Yep.
that are wholly within 12 inches, the ability to be able to run and shoot or and charge,
Mm-hmm.
and also be able to do that if they retreat without getting the mortal damage. So it really lets you do
I
anything you
love
want.
this so much.
And they can shoot in combat. So if you want, you can stay in combat and
Yes.
shoot again. So you will get to shoot no matter what. No matter what happens, you will be able to shoot, you will be able to run and shoot and charge, or retreat and shoot, or I mean,
It's crazy.
really the sky's the limit
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can just see the look on my opponent's face when they're like, okay, now you take D3 mortal wounds, mortal damage from retreating. I'm like, yeah, no, sorry. Sevireth is near. And also, by the way, now I'm going to move 18 inches and then I'm going to still shoot you and still charge you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be
And
fun, fun, fun.
I will retreat 18 inches, I will shoot you, and then I will move again 18 inches.
Yes. And then still charge.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's
Yeah, and oh, by the way, did I mention you can't target me if you're outside of 9 inches? I mean, obviously only with shooting attacks, so spells will still be able to do it, but I do have a 5-up ward, by the way. I think this guy, I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, Seek, if the price differential in our Lumineth list compared to the 2000 points that it is now, or the 1750 points that it is now, is almost all of them sank into Sevireth because he seems so strong.
I feel he will be 300 or 320 points,
Yeah,
something
320,
like
yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Is my feeling.
Yeah.
Not that much expensive, because 270 points was too much for what he
Yeah.
did before, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Well,
So
yeah.
300 or 320, I think it will be fair
Yeah.
for what he does now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I also love how the swirling shards now hit on a 2. It just makes sense. And I love that they only won't wound on a 4. I would even be totally fine if it wounded on a 5. But it just makes sense that there's just a bunch of debris swirling around him. So obviously it hits everything. But that doesn't mean that it actually also wounds you as well.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
that finally they nailed the way that units look, and it translates to stats as well and abilities.
Yeah.
And I love that for the Lumineth.
And now Sevireth does more damage.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this, if we see the start, the Mathhammer chart,
Yeah, let's add it.
this will make him be able to in a much more reliable way, be able to snipe heroes.
Yeah, because realistically, heroes are probably going to be on a 4+ on average. Obviously, you do add the +1 to save from all out defense in that case, but then you're not using all out defense in a different place. And still, most human heroes only have 5 wounds, so he'll still pick them off. And if he doesn't, he can just dash in and deal those mortal wounds as well, right?
Yes, yes. So I believe, and also the fact that he has control of five, he
Yeah,
will just be able to for sure kill small uh, units and get that objective.
yeah.
It will be that much easier for him.
hmm Just something I thought about now, Seek, about the rampage ability Searing Desert Winds. In the battle report that was previewed, um, he only dealt one mortal wound on a charge, and I do think that that proves that the 2+ is on the D6, and then the damage is only on the D3.
Well, we'll see. I mean, we most likely have to see the core rules
Yeah,
on
yeah, they might have played it
how
wrong, obviously, in the stream
E3
as well.
E3 roles are translated.
Yeah. Okay. So that's Severith. Obviously, we're going further into the Hurakan Temple now. So the next unit that we want to showcase here is the Hurakan Wind Chargers. They also had a pretty big glow up. 14-inch move, which is the same as before. 3 health instead of 2, which is pretty cool. Only 1 control, but a 4+ save compared to the 5+ save that they had before. But then the biggest glow up is in their Wind Charger bow profile. Still only 12 inches, which is quite short, but 3 attacks. Very, very nice. 3+ hit. I wish it was 3+ the wound as well. But weight of dice is gonna matter here as well. -1 rent, which is good, and then only 1 damage, but that's totally fine. It has a shooting combat profile though. In melee, not much has changed. They had this weird gimmick where their bow did more or had better rend in melee than in its range profile, which I understood
Yeah,
from a flavor point of view, because I think in the lore there's a bit where they explain that the Gangaroos want to be in close combat, and then they find gaps between the armor to shoot at, or the units, the guys on top, obviously. But that just never translated to how they were played in the game because they died to a stiff breeze.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That was a thing, and I mean, in close combat they are much worse than they were.
yeah,
I mean, the tree runner close was at 3 up, 4 up.
yeah,
Now it's a 5 up, 3 up, but it's a net negative.
yeah.
And their close combat attack with the wind charger bow was much better before. But I mean, uh, you didn't really want them to be in combat, and
Exactly.
you still won't need them to be in combat.
Yeah, and
Uh,
you
the
paid
only
you paid for those those melee profiles in points that you never really wanted to pay for.
Yes, yes, and I mean the shooting is more or less the same if we look at the stats.
Yeah.
So nothing really changed. They still don't do enough damage,
Mm-hmm.
but the fact that you can do the damage and move away makes a huge difference. But again, we'll have to see the points.
Yeah.
For
It.
example, if you have to pay 200 points for five,
Yeah. No,
uh,
thank you.
yeah,
But if they're as cheap as Dawn Riders are now, or comparatively to Dawn Riders at least, and Dawn Riders do lose their ability to cast spells, I can see me bringing these guys over Dawn Riders, because without Aether Quartz, without a better save, for example, I think I'll take the same fast units, but at least they get to shoot, because I do feel that Dawn Riders also never did anything in combat either. So at least these guys will get a chance to shoot some stuff.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, if you use multiple units of those, the fact that the ignore word rolls may come into play
Yeah,
more often than not. But again, it will be depend on the points. If they are 150 points or 160 points tops, I think they will be great. But I mean, more than anything more than that, I will be
yeah.
skeptic.
150 seems fine for this war scroll. especially if you keep in mind that all cavalry is gonna probably get an extra health anyway. So that makes him stand out now, but that might not be the case when all the indexes are out. I do really wish that they still had a way to move over units.
Yeah.
It's such a bummer that I mean, obviously it's cool that they ignore ward saves, but I do feel like the jumping over units was more flavorful than the wind charger arrows are.
Yes. Yes. I mean, in reality, you swapped the ability to move above models and have worse close combat, but you gain +1 to wound and +1 to save. If
Yeah,
we go by their work scroll,
yeah.
I mean, and if
+1 to
we
health.
didn't have the abilities of Sevireth and the Huracan
Yeah.
fast war,
Mm-hmm.
I would consider them worthless.
Completely agree. It's the fact that the Hurricane facet of war is so good that makes these guys for something that I want to bring over Dawn Riders.
Yes, yes,
Because you can do with them what you could do with speed of Hish Dawn Riders now, like move 28 inches. It's something that for them that's not rare. They can still do it.
yeah,
Okay,
and they can run and shoot.
that also, yeah.
And
So it's even more than 28. Yeah,
yes,
yeah. Cool. Moving on to the Elrith stuff here. So apologies for the the bad quality on this screen cap. So the first one I wanted to talk about was the Stone Mage. I specifically didn't put the Stone Guard here first because there's so much on the scrolls of the Stone Mage and on Avalenor's War Scroll that we need to properly assess the power of the Stone Guard. So that's why I went with this order here. So much has remained the same: 6+ move, 5 health, 2 control. Her save went up by 1, I think.
no, it was 4.
4, okay.
Yeah,
Damage is pretty much the same. Yeah,
yeah, it was the D3 attacks.
yeah,
Or 2 attacks on a 3-up, 3-up, -1 and D3
yeah.
damage, or 2, or either 2 or D3.
Mm-hmm,
So it's
mm-hmm.
now always 3 attacks, but it wounds on a 4-up. So
Yeah. And as you can see
in
from the
consequence,
keywords, she's still one cast wizard. What has remained on her scroll is, first of all, the Stone Mage stance. So pick one friendly Elrith elf unit, so that's herself or Stone Guards, wholly within 12 inches of this unit to be the target. Roll a dice. On a 3+, add 1 to the rend characteristic of that target's melee weapons for the rest of the turn. So that's something that she had before as well. That wasn't on a dice roll though before, was it?
yeah, this is much worse
Yeah.
because before you were losing your piling moves, but it was for him and for all Stone Guard units wholly within 12 inches,
Yeah.
not just the one, and you didn't need a roll. So now it's this ability is a nice bonus if it happens.
Yeah.
You cannot rely on it. Or
No.
I mean, if you work the math hammer in your head about how much damage your Stone Guard unit will do, you will need not to take this into into account.
Yeah. Yeah. She
If
did
it
also
happens,
lose her
great.
fly.
Yeah, it was only with her
Yeah,
spell.
her spell,
It
yeah.
was it wasn't on the war scroll. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I believe this spell, which is from the previous Lord of High Peaks,
Yeah.
is better than the one she had before.
Okay.
I
Take the lead.
So Living Fissure is more or less the same as it was.
Yeah.
It's on a 7 casting roll. You pick a point on the battlefield within 18 inches of this unit. And it doesn't say within line of sight, visible. So that,
Oh yeah.
they may add it on the core rules that in order to cast any spell, you need to have line of sight.
Hmm.
But if this isn't the case, This actually makes the spell a bit better because you can hide the Stone Mage and still pick a point
Yeah.
within 18 inches and do the effect. So the effect is you draw a straight line between the target, the point, and the center of the base of this model, and you roll a dice. And again, it's the same thing we saw before in Severeth.
Yeah.
You roll a d3, and on a 2-up, inflict an amount of mortal damage on that unit equal to the roll. So I think this enhances my take on the fact that it won't be an actual 2-up. It will be a 3-up. Because now you don't have an ability to accompany the effect. It's just the mortal damage.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I could be wrong, but
It would make sense to do it as you say it, because then it's just a D3 and you don't actually have to roll a D6. You could just well, there's no D3 in the world, of course, but you know, I understand where you're coming from. I do still think that there might be a chance that it's a 2+ on the actual die, and then for the mortal damage you just look at the D3 result, but we'll see.
so if you roll a 1, it's nothing. If you roll a 2, it's 1.
Yeah,
And if you roll a 3 and 4, it's
exactly.
a 2
Yeah,
and a 3. Okay,
that's
okay.
at least how they
Yeah,
played it in the
that's,
stream.
that's totally possible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's better because I think the range went up from, was it 12 or 9 before?
No, it was 18 inches. It was
Okay.
12 on the second battle tome we got,
Oh, okay. Damn.
I think.
I,
In
I
the
do
previ-
I
in
do
the
feel
last
like
one, it
7
was
is
rating.
a steep price though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel Alert Stone Mage is that great, but the fact that our scenario wizards most likely won't have the deep thinker ability they had,
Yeah.
paired with the fact that he can now take spells from the Lord of His,
Mm-hmm.
I think we will see more temple wizards than before.
Yeah. While I
So
would
if you
actually,
use Alaric units, why not have him instead of a Scenari wizard?
it's fair. I do feel like the Storm Mage stance isn't very impactful though, so I would naturally be inclined to take a different wizard that has at least a guaranteed value.
Well, the fact that he can keep our Spirits of the Mountain of Valinor in top shape still has some
That's true. Yeah.
synergy
Yeah.
value,
That's a perfect
I think.
segue to to our next slide here. So Avalenor, or if you watch the stream, the casters there have butchered his name in all different ways that it could be butchered. Did you watch the stream, Siegfried?
Um, the battle? No, no.
Yeah, it was like it was so. I do think that the casters did a good job, but it was so obvious that all of them played 40k much more often because they used all the terminology from 40k, and they also never said Avalenor's name correctly, even when his war scroll was on their screen, which you know, is baffling. Avalor, Avananor, Avanori, whatever it was, crazy. Different pronunciations of his name. Anyway, the Stoneheart King here. Also some glow ups, I suppose. 16 health, which is a lot. 6-inch move, which is the same. 3+ save and 5 control. Did his health go up by 2? No, the regular spirit had 14 and he always had 16, right?
Yeah. In the last battle tome, it was 16.
Yeah. Geomantic Blast, wow, that range has been reduced by a lot. Their range on their blast was crazy though, I have to say, but yeah, seems like almost an afterthought now.
Yeah, I almost wish we could get another attack and lose it. Another attack on the Fire Stealer Hammers and lose it.
Yeah. So Fire Stealer Hammers, 6 attacks, 3s, 2s, super nice. Rend 2 and 4 damage. No abilities, but it doesn't really need them. So no longer any mortal wounds on the Fire Steel or Hammers. Yeah, what a amazing profile that is. And the hooves are all right, I suppose. Yeah. Quick mention, the skull there next to the Fire Stealer Hammers is a reference to the battle damage ability below his weapon profiles, which is the replacement for the bracketing of their monster profiles. So while this unit has 10 or more damage points, the attacks characteristic of its Fire Stealer Hammers, is so difficult for me to say, is 4 rather than 6.
Yeah. I mean, as we can see on the charts, overall his damage is worse than before. And he, even if it seems that he brackets in a better way, he really doesn't.
Yeah, because of Stone Mage Symbiosis.
If he suffers, if he suffered 10 damage before, it will still do a bit more damage than what he will do now if he suffers. Yeah. I didn't include the stats for this because it was, you know, not a main thing, but yeah, initially I was okay, but he gets, you know, less bracketed, but that is not the case really.
Yeah, damn,
if
that's
you
a bummer.
if you do math. But again, even if it's even his damage is worse, it's still solid.
Yeah. Yeah, and then he has his fights sequence ability. So in your combat phase, you get to spend 1 command point if you want, and pick 3 different friendly Alarith Elf units. So that's the Stone Mage or the Stone Guard. I'm guessing you want the Stone Guards, wholly within 12 inches. Add 1 to the attacks characteristic of the target's melee weapons for the rest of the turn. This is unchanged, or was it 18 inches on his scroll before?
It was 18 inches.
Yeah. I don't really understand why they would reduce it to 12.
Perhaps it is, again, a design choice.
Yeah, he's a massive mountain, but yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, what do you think about this ability?
Well, it's worse, but it is better at the same time because the range is less, but the fact that Stone Guard hit in a better way, hit harder, this makes this ability exponentially better for their damage profile. So overall, I think this is a net positive.
Okay.
For this part, at least.
Yeah. And then his Rampage ability, so his monster's Rampage in any combat phase. If this unit did not charge this turn, which is a bummer, pick an enemy unit in combat with it to be the target, roll a dice on a 2+, subtract 1 from the Rend characteristic of the target's melee weapons for the rest of the turn, and add 1 to the attacks characteristic of this unit's melee weapons for the rest of the turn. That is pretty potent though, because it doesn't say that it has to target him. So if he's just within 3 inches and he hasn't charged, he's debuffing the Rend by 1, and you're already debuffing the Rend by 1 if you're using your Facet of War.
Yeah. I mean, this is a nice boon because you kind of get to do the Metrica thing.
Yeah.
We used to be able to do, and paired with the fact that he also has a 6-up ward, it makes him quite tanky. But I will have to say that Avalenor, all in all, is worse than before.
Yeah.
Because the loss of the -1 to hit aura is a huge deal. And unless his points, he got a points drop, and if he's still 440 points, I think he feels somewhat expensive.
Yeah, I agree. He's probably a war scroll that shouldn't go up at all, because then I'll be worried. I do think that Stone Guard are worth it, so that might make Avalanor worth it to bring as well. But that really depends on what the war scroll of the normal cow looks like, right?
Yeah, yeah. I feel that if again the point difference is 100 points and they do more or less the same, we may option for the normal Spirit of the Mountain
Yeah,
instead.
yeah. Okay, moving on then to the star of the Elrith show, the Stone Guards. Very much simplified here. 4-inch movement still, which I hate. 2 health, 4 plus save, 1 control, which is all very familiar. But then the Stone Guard hammers, 2 attacks, 3s, 3s, 1 rend, 2 damage. So that's an increase on the damage profile there, which is nice.
Yeah.
And now their passive ability, Fortitude of the Earth. This unit has a 5+ ward, while all of its models are contesting an objective you control. So you also have to control that ability, that objective. So either they already were controlling it in the previous turn, or a different unit of yours was doing that, because otherwise you're not getting this buff. So you can't walk on an opponent's objective and then expect a 5-up ward because you only take control at the end of a turn.
Yeah, this is almost neglectable.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it enforces the idea of them just guarding your backfield, right? They're just guarding your hometown. They're sitting on your objectives. But
Yeah,
yeah.
I think we will be depending on protection of his and not stability. Or the
I
6-up
just
was
wish they
able.
had the inbuilt 6+ wards as Evelynor does.
Yes, it will be much simpler and more
Yeah,
streamlined in a good way.
you either give them a 3+ save, or you give them the 6-up wards.
Yeah,
Something
yeah,
like that.
yeah. I hope they won't be much more expensive than 120 points.
Yeah.
130 points tops. If they go above that, again, it all is dependent on the points
Yeah. You
and
didn't
in relation to the other factions too.
Yeah,
Sure.
you did include a math hammer bit for these guys as well. Because there was so much info here, I highlighted the comparisons in different colors. So, for example, I made just unbuffed Stone Guard, old and new red, and then you can see, as you mentioned, that they're slightly better than before, because they have 2 damage now.
Yeah, they are, as we can see on the stats, they do quite a bit more damage.
Yeah.
I mean, again, 12.44 for against the 4-up save is not that
Impressive.
a huge
Yeah.
damage output, but it's much more solid than before. And if you pair it with Faith of the Mountains, you will see that what we said before, it grows exponentially.
Yeah.
And because before they did mortal wounds on a 6-up to hit, and if you used the Stone Mage stance and gave +1 rend, it didn't matter that much. But now you go from 18.37 to 22.96. So it does give a nice buff to their damage output
Yeah, for sure.
if you have both.
Yeah, if you get these guys into combat with some chaff units or some hordes with low saves, they're gonna wreck face.
Yes, and even if in high save unit, because I don't think we will see much of the 2-up save unless you are a Stormcast or a Chaos Warrior
Yeah,
or
yeah.
very specific units.
We also do have to keep in mind now that everything will have a 3-inch range on their weapons, basically. So it'll be much easier for them to get in combat with everything, because that was such a hard thing to do before. Even though their range was increased to 2 inches, with them only moving 4 inches, it was always pretty difficult to reposition them and then get everyone into combat, right?
Yes. And now you can do with all our units, I mean, our elite units, that will be 10 models maximum.
Yeah.
You can do a formation of 3 models in the front, 4 in the middle, and 3 models in the back. And you get a nice circle that everyone fights,
Yeah.
no matter from what point you get engaged.
Yeah.
And this will frees up our movement strategies, um, and your bookkeeping in terms of placing your models.
Yeah. Yeah.
Units of 10 will be much, in general, will be much easier to use.
Mm-hmm. Depending on the points, they do seem solid now, albeit a little bit boring maybe. For some reason, I'm more hyped about the Wind Chargers, even though their War Scroll is just clearly worse. But because they have more interesting abilities with the Facets of War. With these guys, I mean, if they were 6 inches, I would be all over these guys. But as they are with the 4 inches, man, that is so difficult to play with. Especially
Yeah.
now with fewer units in your army roster, you really need to get value out of all of these. As you mentioned in the Discord, you probably don't want to run 5 units of these as 5-man units.
No, no, I mean, with all of our elite units, I don't think we will see a unit of 5.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a reason. And as I said, screens will not be that impactful, and since you will have even less points to play with, and
Yeah.
we are an elite army, I don't see us using units of 5 of these or Blade Lords for that matter.
Yeah, but Wind Chargers you
Just
do
for
see as 5 though, right?
Uh,
You can
sorry?
imagine Wind Chargers being a 5-man unit though, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
yes, for sure.
Yeah. I do agree about Blade Lords, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on.
Yep.
Right, so that's all we have for the matched play War Scrolls. So now we only have these 4 Spearhead War Scrolls left. And there's obviously a huge asterisk next to everything that we're going to say from now on, because we're actually not sure whether these War Scrolls will remain the same. They might change completely. For example, a thing that I'm 100% sure of is going to change is wizards don't seem to have a War Scroll spell because there is no magic in the Spearhead formula. So I do think that the Cathalar is either going to have her ability as a spell or will gain a spell, just like the Stone Mage has as an ability and a spell. So I do expect that to happen.
And I mean, Darkness of the Soul was the name of her spell,
Yeah.
so...
Yeah, and it's pretty strong as a non-spell, to be honest. So let's take a look at them, because this is the best quality shot that we have. I've transferred all of their stats to typed out War Scrolls, as you'll see in a minute. For example, with Scenari Cathalar, I took the time to copy her War Scroll, which was not that much effort, to be honest, because all War Scrolls have been simplified. So the Cathalar Stellar Wizards, you see no digit next to the wizard because, as we say, there's no magic in Spearhead. But I imagine it'll be Wizard 1 when it's match play. I think her profile will be the same, as in she'll have 5 health, she'll have 6-inch move, she'll have a 6+ save, and she'll have 2 control. I'm pretty sure nothing's gonna change there. Same with Despairing Touch. 3 attacks, 3s, 4s, D3 damage seems legit and also, understandable. The only thing that I do think is going to change is the Darkness of the Soul here. So in your hero phase, you declare to pick a unit within 12 inches, and then you roll a dice on a 3+, subtract D6 from the control score of the target. Super strong ability, if that doesn't become a spell.
Yeah, I believe it will be a spell, but again, D6 is really swingy,
Yeah, true.
and 12 inches, it's a bit too close for comfort. I
Yeah.
mean, as I see her war scroll now, I think I will take the Stone Mage any day, unless she has an additional ability or some other synergy she can offer.
Yeah, the thing is, if you're bringing a Stone Mage, you're also in short supply of bodies, and then her War Scroll actually becomes more useful because Darkness of the Soul will be more impactful in a elite army list, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if the enemy army has hordes, it will be inconsequential. But if the other army is another elite army, it will be very impactful.
Yeah.
So it's again.
Yeah.
So as we see now, I will prefer the Stone Mage, especially if I were to bring Stone Guard
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I can imagine
or
though if it's a match play War Scroll, I can imagine the on the 3+ going away because you already have the 2d6 to cast. So it'll
yeah,
probably just say subtract d6 from the control score. Control score,
yeah,
that's so you think it's the control total and not the value of the control? That
yes.
oh okay.
So if a unit has 5 models and each of those has or 6 models and each of those has a control of 2 because they have 5 wounds or more, for example, this will be 12 minus the 6.
Right. Okay. I thought it was a control value,
No, control score is
the total.
yes.
That
So
is less
that
impactful.
is
Okay,
why
that's a bummer.
I said that D6 is really
Yeah.
swingy.
Yeah. Super swingy. Yeah. No. Okay. I was like, on a 1 or 2, you're probably neutralizing most units anyway. I thought it was kind of cool and crazy, especially because it's 12-inch range, so you really want it to be worth your risk to get that close. Um, yeah, maybe we'll finally run lists where we're not including Cathalars. Who knows? Okay, so moving on to our Venari Wardens here. They have the infantry and reinforcements keyword. The reinforcements keyword is only a spirit thing, so that'll go away in match play. 1 health, 6-inch move, 4+ save, 1 control seems like they'll have that as in the match play version as well. Then we're moving on to the Warden Spike. I'm so happy that the Guardian Sword is gone.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
It felt so bad rolling that separately, taking up your time and then it being worse than your pike in almost every situation. Apart from that, almost everything is the same. So 2 attacks, 3s, 4s, no rent, and 1 damage. But if you're targeting a unit that has charge, you get +1 rent, which is the same as it had before, and it also crits on a. It also deals mortal damage on a crit roll, so that's also something that's the same as before. They did lose their casting from what it looks like now, but obviously, as there is again no casting in Spearhead, that might still change. Though I would honestly be totally fine with them not being wizards because that would save so much time and it never made sense that Militia was better at casting than Temple units. But they did regain their Moonfire Flask. So Hades must be over the moon with this change because that was something that he really disliked in our Discord when the book came out. So once again, it's once per battle. In your combat phase, you pick a unit that you're in combat with, and you cannot have charge, which is a change from the previous version. And on the 2+, you inflict D3 mortal damage on the target.
Yeah. They lost their +1 to wound
Oh yeah,
when
that's
they
true. Yeah.
hit a unit that charged.
Yeah.
But they gained the flask, so it's well, if nothing changes, and unless they are dirty cheap, I don't see using them in any of my lists, to
Yeah,
be
they're not
honest.
great. I honestly the +1 to wound is not a thing that I feel like is the biggest loss here. The biggest loss is the fact that Power of Fish is gone. So obviously you can still buff them with the Power of Fish facet of war, but if you're also already running other units that need their facet of war, you do lose out on some survivability. That being said, if you're running 20 of these guys, Siegfried, and you're popping your Power of Fish on this unit, they're still gonna deal a lot of damage.
Yeah, yeah, but again, depends on the point. It will be about 16 point something
Yeah,
of damage,
yeah,
which will be reliable because even in higher saves. But again, it won't be that far from what Stone Guard can do,
yeah,
and you can have the command ability to actually make the Stone Guard almost as good at damage as Blade. I mean, yeah, I'm really not sold, but we may see just a unit of 20 in some lists,
mm-hmm.
just for to act as a hammer. But again, it will depend on the points. If they are like 120 for 10,
Yeah,
I can see I have a unit of 20 in a list.
yeah,
Anything higher, I don't see them being used.
yeah.
We have better options, and
Mhm.
Stone Guard will be tougher.
Yeah, you can't really see them
And
going cheaper than 120 because they're way too threatening if you would be able to take 40 or 50 of those for cheap, right?
yeah, yeah. So I see them being 120, 130, but
Yeah.
again, it's not that they will be useless, but they for sure won't be spammable or a unit to use multiple times. It will
Mm-hmm.
either be a unit of 20 or nothing, or we may see some wacky list with someone use the Lord Regent, and if the Lord Regent will be able to give the power of his on a second unit,
Yeah.
then you will see two units of 20 and have both of them have power of his own. But this is too much trouble for too little gain, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
And honestly, I can still see them getting rid of the mortal crits in match play because that the fact that it's unchanged basically if they get a Parafish Facet of War at least from their first incarnation where they were really, I mean, they were terrible to face off against because you could not put anything into combat with them because they would just die. Um, I almost feel like they still gave it a crit mortal because in their spearhead, in the Loomis spearhead box, there's otherwise nothing that can reliably kill something with a good save. Since Sindels have lost it, I can still see them going with the match play version where the mortal changes to auto wound or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
And I honestly I wouldn't really be bothered by it if that meant they were cheap, like 110 or 100 maybe even. Like you just put 10 models in front of your stuff, and they absorb one charge, and that's it, because they're militia anyway.
yeah, yeah.
So I could see that
Well,
happening. We'll see.
we'll see. We'll see. We'll
Yeah.
see. But I'm not excited about them.
Yeah. Okay. Then we also have the Sentinels. So the Sentinels, same stats as before: 1 health, 6-inch move, 5 plus save, and 1 control. The Venari daggers and Oralan bow have all been changed. So the bow has 18-inch range, 2 attacks. That's 1 more than before. 3 plus 2 hits, 4 plus 2 wounds. Just a fixed rend value, which is nice, and then damage 1. And their ability to do mortal wounds, like all Wardens and Donors did, has been changed to auto wounding on a crit roll. Overall, I like the design of this unit much more as it is now. As in this War Scroll, I like much more than what it is now. It made no sense for me that their daggers were actually good in combat with Pyrovision and all that stuff. So that's totally fine for me. That's just a weak dagger. And I'm very happy that they have 2 shots now, because it's just weight of dice as it should be with ranged units.
Yeah, yeah. I feel they, again, depending on the points, they will be much better.
Yeah.
Um, I like the fact that you can still up their range value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the lofted
Uh,
shots adds 6 inches to the range, but subtracts 1 from the hit rolls.
yeah, so they will be more damaging than wind chargers. But again, I'm not sure. We may see them being replaced by wind chargers wholly,
Yeah,
just just because the other unit is much more durable, has much greater movement, can ignore ward saves, and have all those movement shenanigans. And
it's
I
true.
mean,
But then
yeah,
you were gushing about the Ideneth Reavers, right? That have sort of the same profile as the Sentinels do now.
yes. Again, it will depend on the points, but
Yeah.
if we didn't have the kind of wind chargers it seems we will have, then I will say that we will most likely use a unit of 20 in most lists,
Yeah.
and we may still see them. Um, but I feel people will be leaning more on Huracan units,
Yeah.
on wind chargers
Yeah,
than this.
especially
Again,
because
depending on
their
points.
hurricane ability is so powerful.
Yes, and it's they're tougher.
Yeah.
3 wounds and 4 up saves compared to 1 wound 5 up.
Yeah. But if Sentinels
It's
go down to
really
120 or something like that, I can totally see me bringing just one unit of 20 to snipe some stuff or just deal some chipping damage.
Yeah, but I don't see them being less than 150 points.
Really?
Yeah, because they do more damage than before, and
Yeah.
they were 150 now.
Yeah, that's
So,
fair.
and since we saw that most units are more expensive,
Mm-hmm.
I don't see them being less than 150.
Yeah.
So if they are 150 and wind charges are 160, I mean, which one will you use? Even
Yeah.
if their damage will be higher.
Is there something that you expect to change from Spearhead War Scroll to Match Play War Scroll in this case?
No, I feel that apart from Cathalar, which I expect we may see another ability, I feel all the units in the spearhead will be almost identical.
Yeah. Because
That's
I
my
could, just as I could see Wardens changing to crit auto wound, I could also see these guys going back to crit mortal just to keep the same um, Vanari buff up as it used to be before. But then 2 attacks is insane with crit mortal, right?
yeah. No, that won't happen, and people will hate us even more. So
We'll hate Sentinels even more if that's even possible.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay, and the last War Scroll, a War Scroll I think we're both pretty happy with.
yeah,
The Blade Lords. So again, not a lot has changed here in the basic profiles. So 2 health, 6-inch move, 4 plus save, 1 control. And then you still have the 2 types of Sun Metal Great Blade. So you have the Perfect Strike profile and, oh, I did not adapt to hit and wounds there. And the Flurry of Blows. So the Perfect Strike,
yes.
ignore what the hit and wound and damage values are. That should all be dash because it's an ability. But the Flurry of Blows is pretty cool. 3 attacks, 3 to hit, 4 to wound, 1 rend, and then on a crit you deal a mortal. And if you're fighting infantry, your rend goes up to 2, which is nice. Slight improvement on what it was before.
Actually, it's a bit worse.
Is it?
Fleur, yes, it's worse if you want to use it as a horde killer.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's only
Better
worse against big hordes, right? Yeah, okay.
any unit with more than 10 models, it is worse.
Yeah,
Even if it is an infantry and you get the extra rend,
yeah.
as we will see in the stats. But if you are fighting a unit that has not 5 or more models, it is better.
Hmm.
So it's universally more versatile, but it is not as good as a horde killer as it was.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so and the perfect strike is still basically the same. So you just don't roll to hit. You roll a dice, and on two, it inflicts a mortal. It inflicts mortal damage on your targets, which is still amazing, especially now with the 3-inch range that your units are gonna have. Man, if these guys remain fairly costed, I know that I'm picking those over Wardens any day.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Even if they are a bit more expensive, I will still prefer them.
Yeah, yeah. And the Guardian passive has also changed a little bit, so no more bodyguarding. I wonder if it's gonna be a generic thing that there's just no more bodyguarding, which I would be somewhat fine with, I guess. While your
It was too complicated before.
sorry?
It was too complicated before.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because some units could also use words, some
Yeah.
couldn't use word. They had to make a whole section of FAQ just to clarify it. So now it is simple. They
Yeah.
get a word, the character gets a word, everybody's happy.
Yeah, the cool thing about this Those Secret is there is really no gimmick to this. You just need to be within 3 inches of your general, and your general can be anyone. Do you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, but we may see a change for only scenario heroes
Okay. Oh
in
yeah,
the
that would
normal
make
rules
sense because it's in the spearheads.
to
Yeah,
match what it was before.
yeah, that would make total sense.
But
I was
it
already dreaming
would be
of
sweet for Teklis to have a 5-up word
exactly like
then.
I'm just putting five of these guys next to Teclis all day.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, okay, that would make total sense actually. Yeah. Okay, so Blade
Yeah.
Lords, cool. I love that
Yeah.
they remain mostly the same. I can really imagine them changing up the abilities though, but probably the weapon profiles are gonna be somewhat the same or even exactly the same.
Yes, and as I said, they may be a bit worse, horde killers, but in the grand scheme of things, I prefer this more steady flurry of blows
Yeah.
uh, than the previous one. And again, it's less bookkeeping.
Yeah,
You
and you
don't
have
have to
different units to deal with
count
hordes now.
how many models the enemy unit has, oh, I
Yeah.
did one more damage, and now there are 9 models, so
Yeah.
I get to, yeah. So all of this is gone.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it is a net positive
Yeah, I agree.
in gameplay
I agree.
terms.
You mentioned something about stats, but I actually don't think I included your math hammer for the Blade Lords. Did you send it to me?
Yes, I think there is another slide
Okay,
with the
I did.
stats.
Woo!
I'm
All right, good.
I'm looking at it.
Okay, good. Yeah, okay, good. I didn't really recall, but I don't think I color coded these though.
Oh, okay.
Let me quickly. Nope, I didn't. Let's go back. Okay, so yeah, let's compare some values here. The Blade Lords with Flurry to the new Blade Lords with Flurry. That seems like a pretty big improvement already.
Yeah. It's as I said, if you fight a unit with less than 5 models, the new flurry is much better.
Mm-hmm.
If you fight a unit with 5 to 9 models, they're pretty much the same. And if you fight a unit with 10 or more models, it is worse,
Yeah.
the new one.
Yeah.
So it's give or take, but as I said, it's much better for our peace of mind.
Yeah, I really like it. Fun unit. I'm happy that they kept their 2 stances. Very cool.
Yeah, yeah.
I think from all the units in our book that at least the book that we currently have, Blade Lords are the one that I've enjoyed the most because they're the unit in our book that plays the most like they should play. You actually feel like they're good at slicing things up.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't necessarily want them to be bodyguards though, so I'm actually fine with the 5+ ward save becoming a thing rather than bodyguarding.
Yeah, I feel this unit will be our meat and potatoes unit.
Yeah. Makes me wonder though if you're gonna include a river temple at some point, how are they still gonna be different? More charges, I guess, but
Yeah, I mean, but if the River Temple unit only, if we are only be able to take the River Temple warband as an auxiliary unit,
hmm,
it will be a tough sell
yeah,
unless they are so great
yeah,
that you feel the need to include them in a list.
yeah. Sigrid, I just now realized you're probably not bringing a Scenari hero in an Elrith list because you can only bring certain units when they're connected to a hero that they're tied to, right?
Yes, yes.
So you probably can't
I
even
mean,
bring a Scenari hero in a full Elrith list.
well, you will you can have one scenario hero
But
and
then
have the
nothing
Blade
tied to
Lords.
it, yeah.
Yes, or have the Blade Lords with him. So
Hmm.
it will be one more drop, but I think it's fine.
Yeah,
It's fine.
yeah.
And if you bring one scenario hero, you will get to have 3 Vanari units, so you won't need more, methinks.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's move on to our final slide here because you also kind of have to go, right? We're approaching that point in time. So for the synopsis here, the battle traits, as we mentioned, Facets of War being only once per round and only one, at least being one per round, will make things more challenging. But it's also, very strategic. I love that you're like a grand general and deciding
Yeah.
on what your units need for buffs the most. So that's cool, right? It almost takes away a little bit from the orders that the Cities of Sigmar have because it feels somewhat the same. Um,
Yeah, but in a better and much more fun way. You
yes.
make one choice at the start of the battle round,
Yeah.
in most cases, and that's it. It is important, it is impactful, but not much bookkeeping.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this feels great. I mean, the only downside, as I said at the beginning of the video, is the fact that we kind of have had all these
Yeah.
rules by default on our units, and this is the only thing that leaves a bit of a bitter taste
Yeah.
in my mouth. But as an idea and
Design.
as a way for the army to play, it's
Mm.
wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and it also makes mixing unit subtypes feel like an advantage now, even though obviously we didn't gain anything, but it almost feels okay mixing subtypes, but not too many, like not probably not all 3 or 4, even though you probably still can. But as Nicola did in his list, I could totally see an Elrith and Huracan list supporting each other because now they finally solidified what they were meant to do on their War Scroll abilities as well, and in the Facets of War as well. So I do feel like it's very cool that you kind of have to decide which part of your army you're gonna favor now.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Before it was either or,
yeah,
and now you can actually mix and match your uh, army list in whatever way you want.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So battle traits overall, I feel very positively about. Um, I cannot say the same for the spell lore, sadly, but that's mostly because I love the spellcasting toolbox that we've probably lost. Um, I like that it's more flexibility for a single wizard, right? You just bring one wizard now, you have the 3 spells to choose from, and you're done. There's no reason to bring more wizards anyway, mostly. But for
Yeah,
spellcasting
and
armies as ourselves, this definitely feels like a nerf. Would you agree?
yes, but have in mind that before most of our heroes had crappy Force Cross spells.
Yeah.
So now I feel the spell on Stone Mage is better. I like damage,
Yeah. Yeah,
so
and
it is always useful.
and it's
Um,
fun that you don't
for
have to
example,
bring 3 different heroes because you really need all three spells from the Lore of Fish.
yes, yes, and if imagine if the Wind Mage just gets the teleport spell instead of that
Yeah.
crap it had before,
Yeah.
it, it again. it is better, and he will be able to get the spell lords from Lord of His. So all our wizards, no matter how many of them die, you will still, if you have one wizard, you will still be able to do Speed of His. You will
Yeah.
still be able to do Protection of His. So it may seem initially that we have less choices, but in terms of list building and actual choices in spell casting, I think for our army specific, it will be better. Specifically, it will be better
Yeah, because
because
you have
we
to.
mix and match
Yeah,
in
go.
a much more interesting way.
Yeah, yeah. There's just less of a need to bring heroes that didn't really do anything besides sit there and cast, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And also the fact that you can use our artifacts, because we saw in the game that Silver Wand was given on the Stone Maids,
Mm-hmm.
which again it was a huge limitation because the Alarith unit had those artifacts, and the Huracan units had those other artifacts, and it
Yeah.
was, limiting.
Yeah.
And most of them were not great artifacts.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's much better to have a few artifacts, perhaps like have 6 artifacts for the whole army, and be good, useful.
Yeah, definitely agree. Yeah, yeah. It's just it felt so flavorful to mix your spell lords, right? But I'm complaining about something that might not even be true. There's might still be different spell lords as well.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but it's definitely clear that there's no mixing. That's for sure, at least. And what does that
Yeah.
mean for Teclis? I don't know. I just really want to know because I just hope that I don't necessarily mind Teclis being less useful than bringing a list without Teclis, but I don't want to feel like it's a punishment to bring him, right?
It
What?
won't be a punishment because if you still get to ignore spells on a 4-up,
Yeah,
his aura, if you still get +1 to cast, which we won't have many ways to take, if he still casts spells on a 10 and most armies don't have the bonuses they have now,
that's
he will
true.
still be powerful.
Yeah,
He probably won't have as many choices, but he can cast the endless spells. I feel it won't be as bad. I
yeah.
feel Teclis will be.
Maybe they'll allow him to take 2 manifestation lords or something like that, as you mentioned,
Yes,
or
and
even
even
more.
one, you will do Storm of Searing White Light, you will do his Protection of Teclis,
Yeah,
and you will do 2 other spells. You will still, you can do Speed of His still, and you
yeah,
can
true.
do. So I don't think it will be that bad. He will be less of a toolbox, but he will still be useful.
Yeah,
And with
and
those
if
high
there's
casting values,
any point reductions tied to that, I would be very happy.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
If he goes down to, let's say, 700 or 650 or something like that, wow, then
yeah,
we're
yeah, for
talking.
sure.
As far as War Scrolls go, Kangaroo is back on the menu. um, Not that they actually deal that much more damage, because as you calculated, they don't. But their movement flexibility is insane. It's actually better than what we have with double speed. Well, with double moving Dawn Riders, because you get to spread it out and still be useful throughout the rest of the game. So I think that's very cool. Some scrolls are obviously weaker. That's a game-wide phenomenon. And to be honest, we've been saying that most scrolls will be weaker, but we haven't really seen that many scrolls that are that much weaker, right? At best, our
Yeah,
most of our complaints are they're just as bad as they were before.
yeah,
But since everything should probably go down in effectiveness, that actually means that they also still went up, right?
yeah, yeah,
So there is something to say about that. And then obviously the Spearhead scrolls, we don't know how literally they'll transfer to match play. But once we have more info on that part, we'll obviously see you guys with a new video. Right. So, Siki, is there anything you still want to mention on the synopsis slide?
Well, I'll just have to say that this seems to be, it will be a great edition.
Yeah.
And I think our Lumineth Realm Lords faction looks great.
Yeah, I'm so happy that's not boring.
Yeah, this is the most important thing.
Yeah, because
Even if we are not the S level, the S tier army, it will be much more interesting.
yeah. Yeah, I really, really strongly believe that they were just going to give us Aether Quartz and lightning reflexes and nothing of those other kind of things. I don't know why, because that wouldn't have made sense, but I'm very happy they chose to go this way.
It's great.
Yeah, that brings us to the end of our video. Thank you all for watching. Siegfried, thank you so much for accompanying me on this first journey into Lumineth Realmlords 4.0. I'm very, very thankful for your insights. I hope you had a good time.
Yeah, always.
Guys, please leave a like. It helps us tremendously if you leave a comment as well. So maybe just let us know which unit you prefer so far for Lumineth. Which one is your favorite, or which one are you looking to play the most of? And is there a war scroll that you really want to see? For me personally, even though it's not something I expect much of, I just really need to see the Sanctum. GW, please.
Yeah.
I need to know before the 1st of July, then I can still order them for a cheaper price, because you're going to raise the prices on the plastic again.
Yeah.
But yeah, guys, keep the conversation going in the comments. You can also find both me and Siegfried in the Discord, and let us know what you want to see next. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.